afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Patagonia Health. Today's webinar topic is on the stages of change. Now, if you aren't quite familiar with the Zoom webinar platform, take a look at the control panel at the bottom of your screen. It's here you can configure your audio settings, send chat messages, and ask questions. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to our awesome clinical director, Jonathan Strange.
Awesome. Thank you, Denton. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Strange. I'm the clinical director here at Patagonia Health. My specific duties are, working with our behavioral health customers and specifically our providers and helping them to be successful in their workflows and helping their clients. My background is as a clinician, so I have my master's degree in counseling. I was a certified drug and alcohol counselor and addictions counselor, as well as a mental health therapist for many years. I worked in various settings at inpatient and outpatient. I've worked in MICA mental health treatment facilities, specific for the criminal justice population. I've worked in school settings as well as jail settings. So I've kind of have a history of the kind of in various aspects of the behavioral health side. What we wanted to do today, we felt like, this is a good opportunity to share some of our knowledge and our experiences in specifically just trying to affect change, whether that be for yourself or for other people that you may be assisting as a help, catalyst, or in your case maybe a therapist. So what we want to do today is really go down through what the stages of change are, and really kind of go through some examples of maybe how we can get to that end goal more effectively, whether it be for yourself or for your clients. With me today is my counterpart, Phil Hickman. Phil and I work very closely together. I'm going to kick it over to Phil, let him talk about himself, and then we'll kind of jump into the presentation.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I've worked in behavioral health for over 20 years now in various roles, starting from the bottom as a direct support professional and ending as a CEO for some very large behavioral health companies. I changed directions about 4 years ago to help addiction and behavioral health organizations like the ones you're working for choose the right path for their technology needs. Before John gets started, I want to tell a story about change. Let me start by saying that change is the one constant that can strengthen us or break us. What does it take? My story is about understanding that we all doubt ourselves. I know I have. It's natural to think like this. It is critical thinking for us, not error thinking. A sliver in my memory in my life starts in 2008. I was struggling with what I wanted to do with my career. The economy was bottoming out, and I was working as a clubhouse, PSR manager for a community mental health authority. Yeah, I had a lot of security. I liked my job, and I was actually being mentored by a CEO of that mental health authority. But my passion for behavioral health and helping others was waning. I wanted to do more for communities and people. I had a desire to do that. So I worked hard and planned everything out to a T to find the biggest challenge and change I could. Most of what I call my lighthouses, or quote unquote, my mentors, said, they use the term, I don't think they use it today, but they said I was crazy. But I knew I needed change. So I took the biggest leap I could. I moved halfway across the country. I took a big job in Arizona. I was alone in a very different environment, but that wasn't enough change, right? I was now leading the urgent psychiatric center in Arizona, now called Connections Health. It was one location, 120 staff, $13 million budget, serving 1,000 clients per month, and with about 20,000 covered lives in Maricopa County. We had a no wrong door policy, and it was the only crisis umbrella service for individuals needing a secure and safe service, more or less a diversion center from a hospital. Change and challenge were constant. We had to battle community, political backlash, for managed care, the community itself. We had to work in conjunction with a new managed care organization. We had major staff shortages, a lack of resources. I'm not telling you anything you don't already experience. And we needed better processes because we were just about to go into joint accreditation. Most importantly, I needed to take care of my staff, who would ultimately take care of our clients. So what do you do when you're faced with insurmountable feats, anxiety, and fear, as I was, to turn things around? What I did was take it on. The purpose of what we do and what I did was everything: to make bigger impacts, to serve more people. That has always been my mission. I remember calling a mentor of mine and saying I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrified. I needed help. I turned to people that I could trust and ask for help, working tirelessly to learn with the team. We came together as an organization and overcame through change. That was a big moment for me in changing my mind and my perspective. I never stopped being honest with myself and accepting feedback, giving back to others in a mentoring way, paying it forward. In summary, the goal is to understand change can help you grow, to be consistently humble, and complacency was surely the catalyst for my change. And I just had to admit it, and it was obvious I had to take it on. So that's a little bit about some of my journey and how I handled change. Thanks again for joining today and for listening, and I'm going to kick it back to John now. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Phil. So, in kind of what Phil is talking about, we all have experienced times in our life where we, whether we know it or not, we need to change, or in many cases we do know it and we want to change. And today is really about how can we effectively accomplish that. And whether you're attending today to learn maybe more about techniques to get there personally yourself, or whether you're doing that for the clients that you work with on an everyday basis, some of the things that we talk about today can be used in both settings. Obviously, change can be very serious in nature. It can be things that are life or death. If you don't change, you can have the ultimate consequence. And then much on a lesser scale of, what most of us experience every week, and, wanting to just be healthier and get in shape, or, change some of our bad habits that we might have on a weekly or daily basis. So the stages of change are really something I incorporate in all aspects of my life. Phil and I, right now we found a way to use our behavioral health experience to, move into electronic health records and behavioral health specifically. And, I actually use these terminology when I'm working with our prospects as well. I say, well, they're in this stage of change to make a change in their particular practice, So again, we'll use specific examples today, and we'll talk about how do we know what stage we're in, or in many cases, where are your clients at? So if you are a provider, a therapist working with other individuals, how do we know where they're at? In order to help them, we kind of have to know that. What prevents us from change, or our clients from change? How can we help with goal setting, both internally or externally? Mindset, what are the triggers and feelings and the responses that we have to those things? Our brains are a very powerful thing. They will play tricks on us, and it will try to really, whether it be a defense mechanism where it's trying to protect you from different things, or your brain may do things to just try to point you in a direction based on your history and what you've learned, right? So some of this is kind of relearning behavior and teaching and reteaching your brain how to think differently, and therefore how to behave differently, and therefore change. So we're going to talk about how do we get to that consistency, which is where we're going to really start to see that effective change pay off once we're being very consistent with that change behavior, so on and so forth. So stages of change. I myself, I live pretty much in this preparation, action, going back to contemplation, preparation, action, contemplation, preparation, action. I'm notorious, and again, I know there's probably a lot of people on this call that are the same way. Monday, right? I'm gonna go to the gym on Monday, right? So it's always for me, that's kind of like my mindset. Well, I went Monday and all of a sudden I screwed up Tuesday. I didn't go the rest of the week. Friday, I say, all right, I'm gonna start over and I'm gonna do this again, and I'm going to start on Monday, right? So in that example, I'm kind of fluctuating between, I'm contemplating that I want to get in shape and I want to, improve myself and lose weight or whatever it might be. Um, I may have prepared to do that by getting a gym membership or going out and getting new sneakers or whatever it might be that I've prepared myself to be, kind of go to that next stage, which would be action. And action is when I'm actually doing it. Now, that doesn't mean you've changed yet, right? It just means that you are now kind of gone through this array of different stages in your mind, and you're actually doing a changed behavior. We're not really into that change full cycle until we reach the maintenance stage. And we're going to talk a little bit about maybe some ways that we can get there and what are the things that prevent us and our clients that we might be working with from getting from pre-contemplation to contemplation even is probably the hardest one. When somebody doesn't even want to change. So they have no intention of changing their behavior when they're in pre-contemplation. I mentioned that I was an addictions counselor for many years, and I did that both in an inpatient and an outpatient setting. And the outpatient that I worked at was in a very small town that I grew up in, right? So I knew a lot of people coming through the treatment center personally. And you would get that, that particular area is notorious for having people that don't even want to change, right? So they've been sent to treatment, whether it be mandated through the legal system or court, or even maybe their spouse is threatening to leave them if they don't change. So they're now in pre-contemplation. They really don't have any real mindset yet that they even have a problem or that they want to change. They have no want there at all. So an external factor may be getting them to maybe participate with you, but now you have to be able to get them to move from pre-contemplation to contemplation. Questions like, what brings you here today? Getting a mindset of why they think they're there. Oh, my wife told me I have to come. Or are they here because maybe they respond in a way that says, I'm here because I've been having a little problem with drinking. That's a totally different response, right? That might mean that they're more open to that contemplation stage earlier than somebody that won't even admit that they have any problem at all. So questions like, what would it look like if you didn't drink? Or what would it look like if you got in shape? Or what would it look like, whatever the change process that you're trying to accomplish, right? Create an image in their head that might spark some thought processes to kind of make them question, oh, you know what, maybe I do need to change, right? And once you've been able to do that, you've kind of moved into that contemplation stage. They're aware a problem exists and they're admitting to that. And now we got to get them to that next stage of preparing to actually take action to stop doing a problem behavior or start doing an improved behavior or a different habit, right? So all of these things, we tend to do just as humans. We do this in our own minds. We could potentially cascade through all of these in one day. I may have gone to the gym this morning, and by the afternoon, I'm, eating McDonald's and I'm smoking a cigarette and I'm, have no intention of going back. Like you could go through this whole cycle over and over. And where we want to try to live is in the action and maintenance phase. We hope to not get to the relapse phase. And at that point, you have, accomplished change and you have really started to feel the results of that. So, and actually, it was kind of funny story. I knew I was going to be doing this webinar this week, and about 3 months ago, I had been going to the gym, and I went in the morning, and my gym was just closed. It went out of business. It was done. I got no notification of it, nothing. It was just closed when I went. And, I found through doing some research, some other gym had bought it, but it was closed for 3 months. Well, they just opened last week, right? So I thought, okay, and during that 3 months, I personally used that as an excuse on why I didn't have to be doing that behavior or action, right? So I moved from the action stage back to really pre-contemplation, to be honest. And then as I knew that the gym was opening back up, I moved back into contemplation. I moved into preparation. I got a new membership for the new gym. And this week I started, and it's kind of funny because I started Monday knowing I had this webinar of change. I started with a 48-hour water fasting. And if you've ever done that, it's not fun. It was pretty hard. I did get through it successfully. And it's been a good week. So hopefully I can stay in that action and maintenance phase and create my routine back to where it used to be. So how do we all kind of help other people to get to that same plan? And, whether it be internally or helping your clients, I like to kind of show this as a mental kind of way of explaining how our brain works, right? So we think about the pre-contemplation stage of change, and chapter 1 here says, I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in, I'm lost, I'm helpless, and it isn't my fault. And it takes forever to find a way out. And the key there is, again, I fell in, I didn't even know that hole was there, right? I fell in and it isn't my fault at all, right? So again, we're notorious from a change perspective, especially in our space, looking at addiction, because this is a common thing the brain does to us. And this might be somebody, again, who's using drugs or alcohol, or and again, that's their hole and they keep falling in it, but it's not a big deal. It's not their fault. They're just doing, this, they're falling in the hole because of some other reason, somebody made them angry or some external reason. It's not their fault, right? Chapter 2, I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend that I don't see it and I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but again, it isn't my fault, and it still does take a long time to get out of that hole. The difference between chapter 1 and chapter 2 is simply that they pretend that they don't see it, right? So they know what they're doing is wrong. They know that their behavior is not the right decision, but they're going to pretend that that doesn't exist, and they're going to do it anyway, right? And again, it's still not their fault, right? So we go from pre-contemplation. Chapter 2 isn't quite in contemplation, but it's awareness. We're in awareness now, but we're still kind of saying, you know what? I don't have a problem. Like it's not my fault. I don't have a problem. Chapter 3, I walk down that same street. There's a deep hole. I see the hole. I still fall in. It's a habit, but my eyes are open. I know where I'm at, and it is my fault. I'm able to get out immediately. So again, moving from chapter 2 to chapter 3, I'm going from, contemplation. I'm really now in contemplation. I've admitted that I have a hole or a problem, as well as, so I have something I want to change. And I know that I keep doing this habit and it is my fault, right? That's the big difference, right? Now I admit that I have some ownership of this behavior. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole and I walk around it. I'm in action stage. I see my bad behavior. I'm avoiding it. And I'm doing something to accomplish changing that same chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 of falling in that hole. Chapter 5, I walk down another street, right? So now we have learned that hole exists, and these are the paths to get to that hole. Well, now we avoid that whole path, and we have found a way to get to where we want to be without ever going down that same street anymore. And we've learned that if we avoid that street, we can maintain falling in that hole, right? So I like to show this because I think it's a really good imagery of how our brain, just from our thought process, it changes our ability to accomplish the end goal, to get to where we want to be. So how do we figure out where we're at, right? So if our brain is kind of playing tricks on us and it's kind of telling us, hey, you're doing okay, or hey, that wasn't your fault, or how can we be realistic with ourselves on where we're even at in this journey? And this is where helping agents to change, like therapists and life coaches and things like that, come in, right? Because you tend to get your clients when they're at either pre-contemplation or contemplation / preparation, right? Preparation might be they call the counselor to get an appointment. But it depends on how they got there. If they were mandated to treatment, they're probably in pre-contemplation in many cases. So it's important for us, if we're treating somebody, or we are we're working with a client who has some goals that they want to accomplish, it's important for us to be able to help them and know how where they're at, right? So there's things out there like screening tools that can aid you in doing this. I'm just gonna show real quick about some options that you can do. Phil and I work together to show different options to providers to help their clients, right? So, one of the things that we recommend all the time is our screening assessment counseling tools. You're able to kind of come in here. We have a lot of tools for different types of behaviors and assessing different things. The one that I showed there was called the Eureka. So the Eureka was developed at the University of Rhode Island, but it's a stage of change tool. So it's a series of questions that will allow for you to, at the end, be able to come up with a score, which is going to indicate what stage of change that client might be in. So whether you're doing this for yourself, a lot of us know where we're at, right? If you're being honest with yourself, you probably know where you're at. But if you're working with a client who may be a little has deviant behavior, or is going to be you got to just figure out if they're lying to you, where are they at? Using a screening tool like this is great to accomplish that. At the end, it can tell you, in this case, we're in contemplation stage, and then you can kind of track where they're at over time, right? So as you're looking at this grid of dates of when you've done it, you can kind of see scores are changing, and you can see whether they're shifting to that next stage, or they're lowering their depression or their anxiety. You can use different tools depending on the thing that you're trying to work with the client on, whether it's substance use, and DAST and MAST, depression, PHQ-9, GAD-7. You have anxiety scales and depression scales. The end result is just allowing for you to see scores and use outcome measurement tools to help your clients, right? So we can find out where they're at. The other way to do that is through kind of motivational interviewing, right? So, maybe I'm meeting with my client and they come in and they say to me, I'm really struggling with my self-esteem. I don't like myself. I hate myself. That's the change that they want to do, right? So through asking them questions and motivational interviewing, you can essentially learn what are the things that they visualize and where do they want to be, right? And in many cases, if it's something they're struggling with or avoiding for change, through your motivational interviewing, you can be moving them along that path of the stages of change, right? As we kind of get into that preparation stage, it's important for us to be able to establish goals and the way that we're going to accomplish those goals. So we like to share tools like, let's say, I mentioned the client has low self-esteem. So we can kind of be working with, so say I was working with Phil and he came into my office and he said, John, I really need to work on my self-esteem. This is something I want to work on with you. Can you help me with this? And I can pull Phil up in front of the screen with me, and we can go through this together from a person-centered approach. So we can kind of say, Phil, are these some behaviors that you're experiencing right now? It sounds like you're telling me that, you don't feel very good about yourself. Are you having, lack of pride? Are you anxious in social situations due to your lack of self-esteem? Do you have fear of rejection? And he may be telling me, yes, he has all of these things, right? And that's going to help me to then maybe offer up some goals that maybe Phil wants to work on, right? And, Phil, in his own words, can identify goals as well. But in this case, this can help him to lead down that right path. So Phil might be looking at this with me and he says, yes, I need to improve my self-esteem. Yes, I want to do this. Yes, I want to do that. And then we can kind of offer up some objectives and interventions on how to accomplish that. So by creating a plan and creating goals, we can really create the map for Phil to get to where he wants to get to. So through your preparation stage, you're really setting goal setting and you're trying to find things that we know Phil can do, right? We wouldn't want to pick goals and objectives that are unrealistic for Phil to accomplish. So maybe we want to decrease the fear of rejection. And then in order to do that, maybe we're going to use a journal entry or specifically use something called replacing fears and positive messages. So these are all ways that we can help our clients as well as ourselves, right? We still need to create our own goals, so on and so forth. And then we want to make them measurable as well. So we want, Phil to be able to do this. Let's say realistically, Phil, how many months, do you need to get to where you want to get to, next week? Or do you think, I really, I just want to get there however fast I can, right? So, we'll be realistic. We'll give ourselves a couple months to kind of start to change thought patterns and so on and so forth. So we can really create goals and objectives that are in line with what Phil's image is and vision of where he wants to go, right? So by using these tools, they really do allow for us to get back to, some of those measurable ways of us helping others, right? So every time I meet with Phil, I can ask him questions and see where he's at in this change process with goals and objectives. Is he doing the things that we set out for interventions? Is he doing the things that we said he would get done within 3 weeks? And every session we can be updating that. And that's going to leave Phil leaving that situation with more confidence with a plan, right? So we're giving him a roadmap for his change. Now we can do the same thing, for ourselves, whether it be internal motivation, what is the reason why you want to get to that end result, right? That reason is 100% going to be the difference between you being successful and not, right? If my wife wants me to get in shape, I'm probably not going to get there, right? Or maybe I use that as my motivation. Maybe that will get me there. But the point is that you have to have internal reasoning on why you want to change. And you have to want it, right? If you don't want it, you're going to create all the excuses in your brain in order for reasoning and why you don't need to do it.
So John, it's interesting because, I'm thinking about all the things that you were bringing up in terms of the realistic, I guess, version in my mind of, okay, what can I really accomplish? And I think that that's hard because sometimes you sit there and you want so much more than you can do. So you try to take that leap. I think that's, for me, it's always been a problem of you know, I've always wanted to go 150 miles per hour forward, but it's probably not realistic. So I have to be patient and I have to kind of think about that. I know that that's a big barrier, I think, for a lot of people that I talk to, anyways, that are like me.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
so, anyways, I just wanted to bring that example up because I think it's really important as you're bringing that piece up to be realistic with yourself, not just with time frames, but what can you really do within 2 or 3 months? Because everything's a process when you're changing. Everything is a process.
yeah, and
Anyway,
you have to be open to change. I mean, maybe you don't get there in 3 months. Does that mean you give up? Or you just keep going until you get there? And um, for those of you that have joined us today, it would be great if you could also, find the chat in the Zoom and just write, something that you're trying to change, whether it be for yourself or for other people that you're treating or working with. If you could just give us an example of something you're trying to change, that would be helpful for us to kind of see some of that stuff coming over. And then, to your point, Phil, I have my best friend, his name's John. He is notorious for what you said, and especially as it relates to getting in shape, right? He'll go over the top. He'll go 8 miles on that first day, right? And
yeah,
and lo and behold, he gets hurt every time. We're getting old, right? Me and you, we're getting old. We have to take it easy on our body. We have to go, baby steps and get to that attainable goal. So many
there's
of you, go
yeah,
ahead.
there's some good people are chiming in, so I definitely want to kind
Yeah,
of throw
let's throw
some.
some of that out there. What do you
Yeah, I
got?
mean, I think it's great. So someone talked about sleep schedule, creating a nighttime routine. Another person talked about having a positive attitude. Obviously, another individual said being more physically active physically, changing eating habits is another one. Boundaries, my health. I'm trying to put my diabetes in remission. Meal prep, boy, I mean, a lot of these, I think it's so weird because I mean, it's pretty much everything we all struggle with. I can't figure out because my schedule's 13, 14 hours a day because I coach football in addition to work, and I don't have enough time to find food to eat. Um,
Just
so
do the water fast.
yeah, yeah,
You
packing
don't have
my
to worry
lunch
about
for work. These are really more exercise. Yeah, it's like I totally missed today. Like I was just too busy. It started at 6:30 and it was like I looked at my watch, made a call to my wife. It was 11:30. So I was like sitting there going, where did 5 or 6 hours go? I don't even know. More consistent sleep schedule, exercising. So there's some definite trends, making lifestyle changes as opposed to the ones you shouldn't be getting involved in.
Yeah, so let's
Yeah.
go through some of those. I mean, the overall theme here is, personal health and wellness and different things that you can do. And we all have our own routines, right? We all have our things that we do every day, our things that, maybe some of you, uh, maybe you as a way to relax, you're binging Netflix or something like that, right? And maybe you can figure out a way, how can you still do that but be accomplishing something else at the same time? I recently started to watch different shows while I'm walking on a treadmill. So instead of me sitting and watching, I'm accomplishing getting to the goal by still watching my shows to relax, but I am now just walking while I do that, right? And that makes the walking a lot easier, a lot less, kind of something that I don't want to do. It's something I do want to do. And so, you know, what we need to try to figure out is the catalyst that is going to be the change maker, as well as what is currently causing you to do the behavior that you don't want to be doing, right? And usually that's something in your brain. It's something that we would call a cue or a trigger that creates a particular feeling. And then you have taught yourself to deal with that feeling by eating garbage food or by binging shows versus going on a walk. So it's relearning that response to a feeling. We're going to get into that a little more in depth here in a moment. So I appreciate everybody kind of throwing all the things that, you're trying to accomplish. And again, I mean, a lot of those things are very common, and we're all trying to strive to get there. And, I think together through conversations like this and just staying aware of where you want to be, you're going to be more successful. So many of you have seen the term SMART goals, right? This is a new thing. You get some states that have actually mandated this to be part of treatment planning and things like that. And it does really make sense, right? So having your goals be specific. So setting real numbers, real deadlines, kind of measurable types of things, make sure your goal is trackable, measurable. And especially for those of you that are providers out there who are helping others, that's going to help you to know if you're helping them to accomplish their goals or not, right? If you're using something very vague, it's going to be very hard to track and very hard to see, and for them to feel that they have been successful, right? So attainable, realistic, that was something Phil was talking about. We want to make sure whatever we're setting up for ourselves, we're not setting ourselves up for failure. A lot of us, we sit and we think a lot, and we tend to create this, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. When in reality, all we needed to do was that first thing, right? And let's do that first, right? Let's make that our goal. And then, month 2, maybe we add the next thing. And then month 3, we add the next thing. You want to make things attainable and realistic, and then also give yourself a deadline. This is funny. I don't know if, we have a woman at Patagonia Health. Her name is Monique, and she helps to us in our RFP process. And if that deadline keeps going out, right, you're going to believe I probably don't do that RFP until the date that it is due. But if it never had a deadline, it would probably never get done, right? So we got to have a deadline on the things that we got to get done for ourselves, right? And then it helps us to hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah, I mean, John, it's interesting to me because, it's always the relevance of time. It's like, how do you find more time? And that's another real, common theme in all of the chats is, how do you practice more of X, Y, and Z? And staying off the phone is a good one. But it's like, but one came up, it was interesting because of your addiction background in counseling. A person had stated, the kids I work with are impacted by family substance abuse.
And I'm looking at that.
Yeah, thinking about how the kids are navigating through their stages of change while their parents are also going through their stages of change. Now that's pretty complicated.
Yeah.
So anyways, I found that striking, actually. So
absolutely. Yeah. And that's a very common thing. I mean, obviously that type of change affects the entire family, right? So you're working with children whose parents have addiction issues and trying to teach them, the right behaviors while still dealing with their parent, going through relapse and going through different things. It's a very challenging thing. And I think the more that the kids can learn about behavior and why the things happen and what things are being done to try to change behavior, I think it helps them to accept some things, and also to maybe not hold different grudges against their family, and kind of maybe work together to accomplish the same goal, right? So it's change can be, like I said, it's either life or death type situation, or it's just basic things like wanting to spend less time on your phone. And as a result, the plan to get there is much harder for those other things. Your phone, you could leave up in your bedroom and actually leave it somewhere and go to another room, whereas addiction really plays tricks on your mind through neurotransmitters and the addiction process. The substance is really causing you to become almost to the point where you don't have, control over your behavior. And that's a scary thing. So, through a lot of these techniques and through just changing the way that you think and your mindset, as well as changing your behavior, doing all of those things together should at least make you have more opportunity to be successful. So this slide here happened to me last night, right? So my wife is a school counselor, and school started this week, and the kids are crazy as usual. And she had, a rough day, it was a stressful day, which most of her days are. But I mentioned that I went back to the gym this week, right? And she said, well, I'll go with you 2 days a week. So she picked Wednesdays, was going to be her first day, right? So she came home, and of course, before she came home, one of her teachers invited them for a happy hour where she had one drink, and she came home and she said, it's been a stressful day. And I used that to get out of going to the gym, right? I'm like, okay, I got her right where I want her. I don't have to go to the gym because I had a stressful day too. So maybe we're going to have drink instead. And I used that kind of initial, we'll call it a trigger of stress, to cause a feeling right inside of me. And then my behavior was, instead of going to the gym, I had a drink with my wife, right? And then we didn't go to the gym. And so the important aspect to that whole process is, how do you deal with a feeling, right? If we have taught ourselves, so this is a very human thing, right? We have somehow along the way taught ourselves that if we're stressed out, let's go get a drink, right? Like if me and Phil had a rough day, it's like, come on, man, we gotta go to the bar. Well, that same exact thought process can happen in a stress environment. We will likely have a better end result if we go and do something physical activity wise, right? We're going to probably relieve our stress much quicker. We're probably going to have a lasting result. And tomorrow morning, we're going to appreciate that we took the gym action to our stress feeling, as opposed to the alcohol action to our stress feeling. So the trick there is to figure out a way to relearn and reteach your brain stress equals gym, stress equals gym, stress equals gym, stress equals gym. And then when you have a stressful day, go to the gym, and all of a sudden you've changed this behavior that stress is getting, you down the wrong path, right? So it's really kind of the key. It's the key to change, is that specific association to a various stimulus that we're experiencing in our brain. So those of you that might work in the addiction world, you've probably heard the phrase people, places, and things, right? This isn't just attributable to addiction. People, places, and things is attributable to all of the things that you guys listed on what you want to do for changing. In order to be successful, we might need to change our people that we're hanging around. If I want to stop drinking, I probably shouldn't be hanging out with somebody that's a constant drinker. Or if I want to get in shape, I probably shouldn't be going and hanging out with people that never go to the gym or have no knowledge of it. So many times, in order to get to where we want to get to, we got to change our people, places, and things. All of those things have a very common, different kind of stimulus that triggers your mind. So you might see a place like, I don't know, maybe you see a bowling alley and that reminds you of having a beer or whatever. It's that kind of adjustment in the way that your brain associates different things like places or things. I heard an example the other day where it was a woman who her husband had been unfaithful, and she had caught them in a restaurant where he had taken this other woman, and so her drive home was always past that restaurant, right? And she had, her and her husband had been working on that, and they were to the point where she had forgiven him. But every day she drives by that restaurant, and every day her brain looks at it and says, man, it's reminded. So when she gets home, she's angry at her husband automatically. He doesn't know why, because that's in the past, right? But because today she drove by that restaurant again. So, those types of examples are just how our brain can associate a place or a thing to a feeling. And then our feeling allows us to have a behavior, right? So in that case, she was angry and she was taking it out on her husband, and she knew that she shouldn't be, right? She knew that they have already worked this out and that they want to be successful. So what can we do? Well, we have to change our response to that feeling, right? So number one, she should probably take a different route home, right? We can change the stimulating cue or that's creating the craving or feeling, so that we can ultimately change our response. Now, you could do this, this is an extreme example, but let's just say you want to change any change in your life, maybe start by taking a different route home some days. It might take you 5 minutes longer, right? But visually, you've done something different. And as a result, your behavior the rest of the day may be different or easier because you haven't done the same routine, monotonous drive home that you do every day, right? So the cue is really the event that is making you have the craving, right? And my example was seeing the restaurant, right? And then that reminded her and had a craving and or feeling that would then motivate her to have a response, which was her anger, right? So this cycle, this habit loop is extremely important, right? And the part that we probably won't be able to control are number one and number two. Those are just going to happen. They happen in our lives, like cues and cravings, they happen, right? It's our response that we have to really work on changing. And that's where, let's say for the woman that's angry, you guys have heard, for the person that said they work with kids, you've seen that little anger chart where it has the, count to 10, right? Like a very specific objective. Count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. So why do we do that? Well, because it makes them focus on something else very temporarily, but very specifically in order to change that feeling and the behavior that's likely going to result from that feeling. So if that woman gets home and she puts that thing in her mind, she's going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Boom. Takes a deep breath. Now her husband is saved, right? She's not going to yell at him anymore. She has now put something else in place as her response to the feeling that is causing her to have a negative behavior, right? So it's that same mentality of, what's your excuse for not working out? What's your excuse for not going to the gym? All of these different things. And you're going to change those excuses now by changing your response to them to go to the gym and do the things that you want to change. All right. So the story I told earlier was about, we go down a different road, right? So, hopefully some of this discussion today has helped to motivate you, maybe change your mindset and really start to think about what are the things preventing you from going down a different road, right? What are the excuses that you're making? What are, what type of motivation doesn't exist in you, and how can you, attain it or gather it and create motivation to allow you to change your response to those excuses that you're making for yourself. I'll say this too, the person that mentioned get time away from their phone, right? That right there is causing actual triggers, right? So the algorithms of social media are crazy. You know, if you look at something for longer than 5 seconds, you're going to see the same thing again and the same thing again and the same thing again. By the time you scrolled for 3 minutes, man, if whatever you're looking at is going to have a result on your behavior, right? And that's on purpose. I mean, we're allowing those things to trick us, and we're allowing them to really control us in a sense. So deleting Facebook or getting off of your phone, or maybe even you know, like TikTok, Facebook are notorious for this. You know, maybe you are starting to follow people that, so from a places perspective or people perspective, start to follow trainers that are working out, start to follow workout examples, and watch videos on TikTok about you know, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, whether it be working out, if you're trying to gain muscle mass, you start to follow people like that. Well, now you've changed your trigger. If you're using that, you can positively affect change versus the negative things. So the biggest thing though is just making sure that your response to whatever it is the appropriate response to allow for you to get to that end goal for the change that we're trying to affect. Right? So I hope that everybody, you know, takes this as an opportunity to go down that different road, right? And if it's not for yourself, to help somebody else to do that. And we talked about some various activities that you can do to accomplish that, as far as helping with goal setting and identifying, you know, their triggers, and how, you know I used to run a group. It was a relapse prevention group, and it was a 6-week group, and it was always the same. On week 1, week 2 was the same, and it was a 6-week cycle group. So I'd have different clients come through every 6 weeks. And you know, the first week was on post-acute withdrawal syndrome, and how substances could have affected our brains so intensely that we may be going through withdrawal and we don't even know it, right? And it's not your typical symptomology of substance withdrawal. It's more brain associated physical or psychological withdrawal. And you know, by session 6, we're talking about a relapse prevention plan, right? And by creating responses to triggers, you know, you hear the term relapse prevention plan and relapse, and you associate that to addiction and substance use, but that can be used in all of us in aspects of our lives. You know, we relapse to eating badly, or not going to work out, or you know, we're back on our phone too much. All of these things are relapses. So how can we create our own relapse prevention plan? And that's the key, right? It's the response to the behavior. When this happens to me, when I get angry, I will do this. And it's got to be that positive change occurring in that plan, right? So create your own relapse prevention plan, prevent yourself from going down that cycle, and let's try to all stay in that maintenance stage of change as long as we can, right? Phil, any last words that you have?
Well, I mean, I've been intently listening, and it's weird because, you know, I think I can identify things that I want to change, or I talk to so many people per day, so many of my friends and family and people that I work with, and the people, and I think, you know, we put in our minds that we think we can do it. And we try to put that plan together. And one of the things I found very early, well, not early, but 2008, in that big leap that I took, is that I was not going to be able to do it alone. I realized that real quickly. And, you know, I said, one of my mentors, you know, said I was crazy, but they also said, you know, you need to fake it till you make it. And you know, I didn't name that mentor, but I think it's fitting to name her now. And that was my wife. because it was a really interesting conversation that she was very supportive in me making that change for not just myself, but for my family, for my career. So it's very interesting that sometimes we just need others to look at us and also help us with that. Because I mean, and some people will go to a therapist. I emphatically think that's perfect and you should do that. There's other ways to do it by going to, like I was saying in my message, my lighthouses and mentors, and some of those people were therapists. So it's interesting just to kind of listen to the perspective, but I think the message coming home is the response. How do you respond? So I think that's something that I'm going to take away, because I can think of about 20 things that I respond to poorly already. So it's like you start to have the wheels turn in the back of your head. And I'm sure that everybody that attended the webinar, was thinking the same thing and starting to think through those things. But that was the purpose. I just wanted to say thank you, everybody. I'll kick it back to John, and I appreciate your time and your participation in the chat. And I really, really, really think that was great. And somebody just chatted, great webinar. I will definitely utilize these techniques. Happy first weekend of college football.
I was gonna mention that.
Yes.
Phil and I are big football guys. So
Yeah.
we're looking forward to that. And most likely as a result of that, we'll probably have to put more change in our lives, because we're gonna pinch some football. But
Now I can't get away from the nachos and the burgers and hot dogs and like now I'm in
it's another
trouble.
excuse for us
Football's
to-
here. It's like a trigger.
Yeah, there's your trigger. There's your excuse. So yeah, it's a good point. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and we appreciate everybody's time today. If you'd like to learn more about Patagonia Health, you have our website there, patagoniahealth.com. And feel free to email myself or Phil. You'll have our contact information, and you should be receiving a copy of this webinar video via email. And I appreciate everybody's time, and I hope really, truly, that you guys can all accomplish the change that you guys want. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.